What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are here with DC K.O. And this is Boss Battle, the much-awaited fight between Superman and Homelander. And it's not gonna go the way you think. It's absolutely bonkers. Okay, so what this does here is this opens up, right? And it says Earth, if it can be called that anymore. The heart of apocalypse is ravaging this land beyond comprehension, tearing at its soul, changing it into something hideous, something apocalyptic, and the only place that I, the World Forger, and my ally Gorilla Grodd could escape to. And so Grodd says, the battle with Darkseid has left you hurt, World Forger. Maybe this is a sign. And World Forger simply says of what, Grodd? That we should quit? Throw in with that madman? No. It would be better if this universe ends than letting him have his way. And so Grodd asked the question, that choice may be out of our hands. Look, and immediately points to Superman, Lex, Wonder Woman, and Joker, the four remaining heroes, for lack of a better word, especially when it comes to Lex and the Joker, getting ready to face off against the combined forces of Darkseid, absolute Superman, absolute Wonder Woman, and absolute Batman, right? And in seeing this, the World Forger is like, no, and stops the whole thing dead in its tracks. And he says, I use what little I have left of the power to shape and reshape worlds for one last desperate gambit, to try and save what small chance of survival we have. And you will notice here, right? Clearly this means Superman cannot defeat absolute Superman by himself. And I know a lot of you guys are just like, what? What? Crazy. Just bear with me here, right? This is nuts. So at that point, Darkseid and his forces are frozen in place. And so Joker responds, right? He's like, hilarious, right? Let's slice their throats before they start moving again. And while you would think this would be the most rational choice, never in your life could you ever imagine you would see the Joker being the only one making the rational choice. This gets nipped in the bud very, very fast. And in fact, it's a genius maneuver, right, by Jeremy Adams, because the World Forger says if you were to attempt to harm them, this blink of an eye would shut and the tournament would continue. And so Lex asked the question, then let me guess, we would lose. And the World Forger says, yes, Luthor, these other versions of you were born and forged in the energy of an Omega universe. You do not have the power to fight them yet. And he says, here, I can feel them, former combatants that have lost, but may yet be given a second chance to help us on our quest. So in that moment, World Forger brings back some of the people who lost in the tournament, right? Black Lightning, Plastic Man, Batwoman, Star Sapphire, and it's anyone's guess how it was that Plastic Man didn't make it into the Final Four. That's crazy. He's one of the most cracked characters in the entirety of DC. I have no idea how you square that circle. But World Forger says, as the only one that might be able to perceive the veil of the multiverse, I will attempt to reach out to the worlds beyond and bring new champions into these reality fissures. You all must enter the fissures, fight the champions. I will collect the Omega energy produced, and when my hammer is full, I can transfer the energy to the Final Four to finish this fight. Hurry, I will not be able to keep these rifts open for long. Now, go. Dude, it's a side quest. This is amazing, because at that point, Gorilla Grodd says, I know what it will cost to hold these fissures open. Do you have the strength? And the response of World Forger, I have to. And so at that point, they get flung into these fissures, each person arriving in a different location. And that's when Superman shows up in the boys' universe. And the first thing he says, right, strange, it doesn't look that different from Metropolis, but he hears someone calling for help. Now, obviously, a big difference here is that you've got Vought American out there, but Superman, in hearing this call for aid, goes and responds. And he says, and just like Metropolis, it seems like there's always someone in trouble. But when he gets there, he comes face to face with Homelander, who, as you guys know, is a dick. And Homelander is just like, a problem? Not when Homelander's on the scene, but I'm sorry, who are you supposed to be? He's just like holding someone's arm in his hand that he's just ripped off. And so at that point, Superman kind of starts to explain, and Homelander cuts him off, right? He's like, let me guess, you're here to kill me, right? Another in a long line of people trying to take my mantle as America's favorite superhero. Well, my friend, many have tried and many have failed, but most had better outfits. And fires off his heat vision, and Superman counters, and he says, his heat vision, it matches mine, which is the most outrageous statement that I think I've ever seen. And he says, I'll have to try something else. And so at that point, Homelander's just like, leaving so soon, right? And he just says, I've never seen someone run away by going underground. What a piece of work. And Superman just like emerges from the ground and cold cocks this guy. And he's like, Superman doesn't run away. And that's where Homelander counters, right? He says, my turn, and goes to fight Superman. Now, at that point, we jump back. I know, you guys want to see how it ends, but the stories start crossing over, so we have to make sense of other stuff before we continue this on. I know, just bear with me here. I promise it will be worth it. So when you jump back to Black Lightning, and specifically Plastic Man, they go to face off against Sub-Zero. And it's pretty amazing, because when they show up here, right, Shang Tsung is just like, who dares interrupt this most sacred Mortal Kombat? For that, you must fight. And so Sub-Zero just starts charging up and goes to attack these guys. At that point, you jump to Wonder Woman, right? And she's just in the middle of this arena. And it says, welcome, fans and friends alike, to a battle of the most dangerous women on the planet. At the far end of the Coliseum, we have the Princess of Themyscira, Wonder Woman, and on the other side, she with the blood-red blades, the Scarlet Scourge, the Crimson She-Devil, Red Sonja. And Wonder Woman says, right, the light is blinding, and that sound, like rushing water, that it turns out it's the crowd. But here's a cool thing, right? This is something that a lot of people haven't really thought of yet, right? Technically, if you really want to cook the books and make it this way, Wonder Woman is fighting someone from the Marvel Universe, right? Here's the reason why I say that, right? The Mortal Kombat segment, clearly this takes place in the 1990s. You guys will see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But Red Sonja, between 1973 and 1995, I think, was a Marvel property, right? Mortal Kombat 1 came out before 1995. I don't remember the exact date, but it was before 1995. So, with Red Sonja, created in the comics by Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith, you could make a credible argument here. Wonder Woman is appearing in the Marvel Universe, or at least facing off against someone from the Marvel Universe. It's a stretch, but you can make it work. Then, of course, we switch over to the Joker, and this is probably the craziest one of all, because the Joker says, well, what do we have here, right? A farmhouse, a walk-around porch, shiplap? I wonder what those Gotham house flippers would sell this for. Of course, we'll never know after I murdered them for telling me to get rid of my sunroom. And he says, quaint. It could use a bit more vandalism, though. But then, like, the door slams shut, and he's like, what do we have here? He's like, a little doll. Won't this be fun? Because it's Annabelle, right? A demonically possessed doll from, what is it, the Conjuring universe? And then at that point, you switch over to Batwoman, right? And it says, of course, I get the Gothic castle, and I'm guessing whoever it is that lives there. So I might as well introduce myself. So like, she goes to knock on the door, but the door opens up, and that's where Vampirella just says, I must say, you definitely know how to make an entrance. Now, if you don't know who Vampirella is, she's awesome. She helped a lot of young men navigate puberty in like the 1980s and 90s. But she says, though I do wonder how much better your exit will be. And then at that point, you jump over to Star Sapphire. And this is amazing because she ends up in Greendale, right? And she just says, 1 minute I've lost the tournament, and now I'm flying over the suburbs. And there's this girl who's just like, wow-wee, right? And at that point, Star Sapphire's like, what in the heck? She looks down, and this girl says, I've never seen someone fly without a broom before. And Sapphire's like, a broom? I mean, like, who are you? And she says, my name is Sabrina. What brings you to Greendale, right? And so like, she's literally in the world of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right? And that's where she says, well, I guess I'm here to fight you. And Sabrina's like, I mean, why would we fight? Right? And Sapphire tells her, it's a long story, right? But in order to stop a great evil from destroying my world, we're supposed to fight and create a bunch of Omega energy. And so Sabrina's like, oh, I mean, is that it? Like, I bet I can whip up a nice spell that'll take care of some bad guy. And that's where Sapphire's like, I mean, I don't really know if that's a good idea. But Sabrina just like conjures this spell up anyway, right? Because the whole idea behind Sabrina the Teenage Witch is she's learning how to use her magic. So she usually creates more problems than she solves. Having said that, I have heard that the Sabrina the Teenage Witch comics are amazing. And I don't know if they are, but I've heard they're phenomenal. Like, they're awesome. Those and the Archie comics, I've heard are just like stupidly good. Way better than they have any right to be. But somebody let me know, right down in the comment section. And then at that point, you switch over to Lex Luthor and a character that I didn't even know existed until I saw a video that Mullet Man Comics made, right? So Lex Luthor just says, be on guard, Luthor. There's no telling what the World Forger has come up with. So as he makes his way into this forest, right, he's like, trees, birds are singing. What is this nonsense, right? He's like, what's that sound? Something dripping, like something behind me. He turns around and he's met with Samantha Strong from beneath the trees where nobody sees. If you don't know about Samantha Strong, this story is amazing. I watched Mullet Man's whole video on it, then I turned around and read it, right? So the whole idea behind Samantha Strong is that she is basically living in a world of like anthropomorphic animals, right? But she's a serial killer. And so like she goes to the next town over, like in the big city, and she kills people. And then I think she brings them back to her town, but she keeps the whole thing hidden. Nobody knows. But then another serial killer shows up in the town. So the whole idea behind the story is that it's one part, we got to figure out who the serial killer is. But the other part is Samantha's like, I got to get rid of the competition because they might figure out my secret. Because they drop clues that like, they know who Samantha is and they know that she's killing people. The story's incredible, right? But here's the funny thing about this, right? Lex Luthor is like a bear with a butcher knife. A bear. And that's where Samantha's just like, I'm not sure who you are, stranger, strange furless ape, but try to stay still. It will hurt less. She immediately just starts going after him. Look at the look of terror on this man's face. This girl is putting the fear of God in Lex Luthor. This man's never been so terrified in his entire life. And it makes sense, right? He says, I have to keep going. Stay out of this furry critter's reach. And she just says, my secrets are mine, but don't worry. I will bury you near the others. You'll have a ton of company. Quite literally, Lex Luthor was just thrown into this reality. He has no clue what's going on. He turns around, and the first thing he sees is a psychotic bear with a butcher knife trying to stab him to death. Yeah, I don't fault this man for experiencing the greatest rush of fear he could imagine in his life. Because at that point, he puts up his arm, right? He's like, my armor gives me the chance that I need. And just like flings her away. But it doesn't do any good because like as soon as he turns around, she's gone. And he's like, where did you go, creature? And she says, my name is Samantha Strong and I am right here. And like lunges at him. And so at that point, we jump back to Mortal Kombat, right? Sub-Zero firing off his freezing blast. I'm sure it has a technical name. And Shang Tsung is just like fatality. But then it turns out the Plastic Man and Black Lightning are not dead, right? And Plastic Man just says, I'm glad I was able to wrap us up before old Frost Freak here hit us with one of his magic snowballs, which is really the name that needs to be called from now on, right? Sub-Zero's like freezing move, right? Just magic snowballs. And Black Lightning is just like, I'm appreciative also, although I never want to be that close to you again. And Plastic Man just says, right, that makes two of us. Now, can we finish this guy and save the world or what, right? You shock him and I will smash him. And they literally crush Sub-Zero in like 2 hits. This dude gets crushed so fast. And so at that point, they're just like, we're awesome, right? We're dope. Which, by the way, I think we can all kind of agree now, we need a buddy cop comic. I know I've asked for a lot of these. I feel like every comic, I'm like, we need a buddy cop comic with these. No, we really do need a buddy cop comic with Plastic Man and Black Lightning, because this is probably the best team up to ever come out of DC Comics. But then the statement's made, round 2. And Plastic Man's like, why do I get a feeling that we've made a terrible mistake? And Black Lightning just says, I'm getting the same vibe. Because then Scorpion pops up. Test your might. It's an endurance match. It's an endurance match, which is amazing. And so Scorpion, of course, sends his spear flying into Black Lightning. Plastic Man's just like, there's 2? I mean, that's not fair. I mean, there's technically 2 of us, but it's still not fair, right? Scorpion throws his spear at Plastic Man and is like, get over here. And Plastic Man's like, no, how about you get over here? And like sends him flying into Sub-Zero while Black Lightning shocks the 2 of them together. At that point, you jump to Wonder Woman and Red Sonja. Full transparency, I don't really know much about Red Sonja. I think she like banged Conan for a while at one point. I have no clue. But Wonder Woman just tells her, right, your abilities match even the greatest of my Amazon sisters, Red Sonja. And Red Sonja tells her, right, you're a fine fighter yourself, princess, but to survive in the world of men, you will need to be better. And Wonder Woman just says, I've survived worse than men, Crimson One, and I will fight until my dying breath. And so she just says, yield. And so at that point, Red Sonja just says, I yield to no one, and just starts hammering it away at Wonder Woman. It's just like, prepare to die, right? And so because of the fact that Red Sonja is clearly overpowering Wonder Woman right now, Wonder Woman does the only thing she can, right? She says, Red Sonja is an incredible fighter, fury incarnate with the speed of a demon, but I am not without my own abilities, and blocks the attack of Red Sonja, which of course, as you would expect, sends the two of them flying everywhere. And so in that moment, in the face of all of this, you jump back to the World Forger, and he says, the power from the battle is filling my hammer, but I just can't hold it. And so literally he goes falling back, and that's when Gorilla Grodd looks at everything and says, without his control, the fissures are collapsing on each other. If they merge, the energy will coalesce, and they will all start bleeding together, and Darkseid will win. And so you jump back to the Joker, right? And he says, Annabelle, you are a wicked one, aren't you? Why, your stories are almost as hilarious as mine, because she's apparently talking to him, right? And he says, which really just pisses me off, right? Because I'm the only one that's supposed to be funny around here. He smashes the teacup on the table and goes to stab her with it. But then Superman and Homelander come busting through the ceiling on this thing. I told you guys it was going to be worth it. And Joker's just like, Tea Party crashers. How rude, especially when I was just about to enjoy my dessert. Now, where's that wretched doll? Which of course, it appears right in front of him because the Annabelle doll moves. Now at that point, Homelander starts talking trash to Superman, right? He says, and here I thought you were going to be a challenge, Superman. And he goes to headbutt him, and Superman's like, man, son, you better come strong, right? I was about to say the same thing, but then it turns out you're not. The whole time, Joker's in the background swinging the Annabelle doll around, right? Like, I saw you move, I know it. You absolutely moved, because the Joker's crazy. At that point, you jump back to Sabrina and the Star Sapphire, and Sabrina's just like, well, you know, maybe I can use another spell to calm it all down, and Star Sapphire's like, no, I think you've done enough, and Sabrina's like, no, it's no problem, really, and just like snaps her fingers and ends the whole thing. But in the midst of all of that, Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Plastic Man and Black Lightning come flying into this reality, and Black Lightning's just like, something's wrong, like we're bleeding into the next fight. Batwoman is just like, on another night, this might be fun, but alas. And then she suddenly ends up in this other fight, because now they're essentially in the gladiatorial arena where Wonder Woman and Red Sonja were fighting one another. Superman is taking it to Homelander because Homelander never stood a chance in the first place. Star Sapphire and Sabrina the Teenage Witch are trying to deal with Sabrina just screwing up her magic. Scorpion is blowing his flames at Black Lightning. Sub-Zero is facing off against Plastic Man, creating ice slides like he's Iceman. Samantha's still trying to stab Lex Luthor to death, and the Joker's just screaming about how the Annabelle doll moved. He knows for a fact that it happened. It is the definition of complete and total madness, and it is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so at that point, you switch back to Grodd, right? He's like, World Forger. And the World Forger is just kind of there, collapsed, right? But then kind of starts to come back too. And he says, I have failed. The realities are collapsing, folding in on each other until the universe dies. Without someone to wield the hammer and direct the Omega energy, we are lost. And Grodd just says, not yet, right? I can help you. We can reach out together, direct the Omega energy by connecting my mind with our champions. And the World Forger tells him, right, your powers are not on that level. But Grodd doesn't care. And he just says, grab the hammer, do what we came here to do. And so in turn, World Forger grabs the hammer itself and just says, I can feel the energy. I need to give it to the final four. I have to do it now. And so in that moment, he fires off. And the World Forger says, I can feel Grodd pushing, reaching out to those inside the fissure. His power combined with my own, leeching the Omega energy from those we have stolen from their own realities. Champions, heroes, villains, all with their own lives, their own stories, now in service of our own. Grodd and I send them back, although some resist. And Homelander's just like, not yet, right? Not until this Boy Scout is dead and buried, right? But ultimately he's sent back nonetheless. And the World Forger says, those that fought on the side of humanity have done their duty and now become stone sentinels, overseers of the last battle. And finally, we can send the energy into our final four, giving them the power to fight Darkseid's champions. And so at that point, now they're ready. So you have Superman, Wonder Woman, Lex Luthor, and Joker. And Joker just says, and here I was having so much fun playing with dolls. And Lex just asks, did it work? And the response of World Forger, it will have to. And he says the others have been sent back to their own times, their own realities. And you now have enough power to fight Darkseid's champions. And so Superman looks at Darkseid and the Absolute Trinity and just says, then it's time. Let's finish this once and for all, and goes racing in to fight these guys, which we'll find out what happens in the next video. Cliffhangers, I know, I absolutely know. I was so pissed off. I was like, really? Really? This is where you ended? It's a phenomenal ending to the story. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in DC K.O. number 4. Peace.